We recently completed the 8-bit Dev Pipe, which was our first attempt at sort of a mentorship program to bring other developers along for a sort of ride and help them out in whatever ways we could. The form it took was you had to apply with a team and with a team or solo, and with a game idea in the first place, and then we would kind of help you along to try to get from idea to some sort of prototype or even some sort of launch state. We had 3 participants, which were 2 teams. One was Phil Hayes here. He's speaking in a moment.
He soloed it.
The other was Wes here and Steven in the back, and they made up team 2. So both teams did complete a game by the end of it, and did get a big sack of butterscotch candies as a gold prize.
That's all
we're going to hear about. We've already gathered a lot of feedback from them, but today we're going to hear about kind of what their experience was going through this, and then at the end of all this, we'll talk about our next steps for what we'd like to do for the community moving forward. So, without further ado, Philip, would you like to go first?
Sure.
Hello everybody, I'm Philip. I've been through the 8-bit Dev Pipe process. It was pretty fun. Had started a game idea a while back, and it was missing some things. I had put together like a demo the first day, and then when I brought it in, it was kind of fizzled. It was missing something, and what it was missing was a third party, I guess. I had put together GameStar browsers, and basically what it entailed was you're flying through the universe and doing all kinds of nifty things, fixing planets and stuff like that. And when I played, at the end, you had a finished universe, and then that was all good and done. But in the end, it was just all right, everything's fixed. You're just sitting there now. And so I took it to the Butterscotch Bros, and they gave me some pointers here and there. And forgive me, I'm kind of winging it right now. I guess what I could say is the things that kind of went well for that whole process was the continuous feedback that I had gotten as the weeks went on. It really helped me focus on, I guess, the smaller details after I had seen the big picture. Looking at the big picture the whole time really makes it difficult because now you're thinking about all these things that you can do instead of the things that you should be doing at that moment, I guess. And so next thing you know, you're adding all these features and things like that, and the game gets bigger and bigger as you go, and all of a sudden you step outside of the plan that you had originally set for yourself. And the 8-bit process really helped that out. So I guess really what kind of kept things going pretty good was feedback, yes. Feedback from the other participants, and then giving feedback as well. That was another thing that I hadn't really been very good at. It just kind of opened my eyes to what could make a more complete game picture, I guess as the process went on, got around to the middle of it, and I kind of realized one of my biggest weaknesses was time management. The first half, I actually had made maybe like a month's worth of progress in like a week and a half, and then petered off, and work kind of got in the way. Didn't really schedule things too well, and so for the other half of that of the pipe, I just kind of fell off until like the last week, and then I discovered calendars. So yeah, plotting stuff in calendars, and just getting an hour here, an hour there, wake up in the morning, and just kind of put together small things as time went on, and I noticed that I had made up for the month that I missed in the last week, which was it was kind of invigorating, you know. It revitalized my juices, my brain juices, I guess. I guess as of now, the game is pretty much complete. Like, now I just need to start doing content and stuff like that, which is the fun part, I guess. Got to do a lot of art, a lot of music, and then just kind of recycle, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for now. I just kind of won it. So.
Can you think of any feedback that dramatically changed your game? Can you give any examples?
One thing that I can think of in particular was the talk about skill-based loops and progression-based loops. It helps you cater to certain play styles as you're making the game itself. I chose to go for a progression-based. Well, actually, it's 20% progression, 20% skill, and then 80% progression, where there's like upgrades and arcs and things like that. And just having knowledge of those particular things just kind of help push the game in a certain direction. If I would have picked any other route, I guess, like if I were to go skill based, then it would have really laid the game out completely differently. And it seems like, or at the time it didn't seem obvious, but when I actually thought about it head on, it really just morphed the game completely. Other than that, just learning how to take feedback from other people, just listening to what's going on, putting the game in people's hands, and trying not to defend my baby from, criticism and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got, I guess.
In the beginning, you said that you realized that your game was missing a third party. Can you explain what you meant by that?
So, Star Browsers, there was the player, who was just like this ship thingy that floated around the universe, and that would be considered first party to the player. And second party would be the planets. The planets would spawn in the universe, and they would have just random things wrong with them. But one planet's problem could have been the solution to another planet. So just taking that problem and adding it to another planet's problem, now you have two fixed planets. And I was like, well, that seems like a pretty sweet way to go. But there's nothing preventing me from doing that. There's nothing really adding urgency or there's just no opposition. And that's what the third party was. So I decided to add in stuff that you have to destroy to, I guess, really work with the game itself. And then once I did that, then it started getting a little weird, I guess. Like it changed the way I thought about the game again. So now that I have this third party, this game doesn't work the way it did before. There were too many lose conditions. You could die, and then each of the planets, they revolved around a star, and the enemies were like, I'm going to kill the star, so the planets fall off in space. That was another lose condition. And so it became difficult to figure out what was good to hit and what was bad to hit. And that just opens up a whole other can of worms right there. So, yeah, third parties, fun.
Did you like the direction it went after you said the game kind of changed for you?
At first, I was kind of resistant. Because like, oh no, it's changing from the dream that I had about the game where you do this and that. But then I started to notice that as we played it, like I had like a team speak full of friends who were like, hey, can you play your game? I was like, okay, here you go, download. And they downloaded it, and they would just be like, holy crap, this is awesome. And I was like, well, I thought it was sweet. And as I started started to work with it, it's like, okay, this is actually a much better system. It works for who I was making it for. And actually, as I stepped away from it as like my creation, and I started enjoying it as something that I wanted to play, like, then it started like, all right, this is
Was there one thing you had to cut that you really wanted in order to keep in time constraint, keep in your finish mode?
I had to cut player death, which is an interesting, like, because there were two lose conditions, either you die or the star dies. And it's like, well, if you die, it's kind of cool because you can dodge all these missiles and lasers and all that kind of stuff, but it just makes it hard to program for it because logically it's like, all right, so how do I tell a user that this is dangerous and that this isn't dangerous, smash your face into it? It took too much time to figure that out, so I just cut out player death, and now you can smash your face into everything.
It's very butterscotch.
But yeah, that saved a lot of time, definitely. Any more questions?
I guess what kind of tools did you use to create most of the systems?
I used Unity. I wanted to play with it because I did like a game jam with it a while back, and it had been a while since I first used it, which it was really awkward to work with. Like the stuff that I wanted to do with it wasn't all the way there. But then I had like a 2D kit, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want. All right, I'll play with that. So yeah, it was a lot of Unity. Put the job done.
We get to see the game.
So, about that. As I was leaving the house, I was like, all right, let's do this. Oh, I should probably go back into the house. And I'm like, I will be putting up a website and actually have a Tumblr stuff for that purpose.
What's your studio name?
My studio name will be Brave and Dairy. It's basically brave and legendary smashed into one word.
Sounds like really valiant cheese.
Freedom Development / Dairy Farm.
Brave Dairy. It's the jet there.
Valiant Dairy sounds like it could be a game company too.
So would you put a link to that in the IGDA Facebook group or something so we can
Sure. Yeah.
look around it?
Throw it out there and
Are you currently looking for test flight playtesters?
Yes. Let's see. There's some pretty cool. Actually, I have a tablet version and PC Mac as well. The control scheme is very intentionally simple, so that it allows me to do that. I guess. So yeah, I'll be doing some beta testing, and I'll put that up into the IGA.
Wes and Steven?
All right.
Or just Steve?
So we planned our presentation separately, but we wound up using the exact same theme in Google Presentations.
That worked out really well.
I mean, we planned that. We totally planned that.
That can hook up.
It should. It did 20 minutes ago, so it doesn't now. Yeah, there we go.
Wow, your game's really evolving.
Yeah, we did a lot of work on the terrain generation. And I think it was great now. Sunflowers are nice.
Too lucky.
All right. So, okay, good. My talk on this is going to be mostly about the process of it, because honestly, the thing that I got most out of the whole Dev Pipe process was basically how to suck a little less at doing things. So when the Costers first put out the application for the Dev Pipe, both Wes and I independently went like, that sounds really cool, I'd love to do that, but I don't have a team. And we both just kind of sat there for a couple weeks, and then one day after one of these meetings, actually, we were like, hey, we both wanted to do this. We should do this. So we went out to Buffalo Wild Wings and threw some game concepts around for a while. We settled on a Metroidvania-style game where you can't jump. All you can do is punch the ground and launch yourself into the air, and all the gameplay is based around punching the hell out of things. And I've been working at Simutronics as a game designer for 4.5 years now, and I haven't really had a good side project going in a while, so I felt the hunger again. I felt like I needed one to get myself back involved and stuff. Also, I like doing pixel art and wanted a chance to sharpen my skills a little bit more. Also, why the hell not? So when it came to the skill side of things, I actually did. This is in my opinion, the boring part of the talk because I feel like I got better at pixel art because I practiced. Yeah, and we had things on a reasonable scope and resolution that made it so that I could actually do things. The things were within a means that I could actually execute. Also, a great tip from Sam about picking a focused color palette for things instead of just picking a bunch of random colors and seeing if it works, which is not very effective. Spoilers. So that site is a free utility from Adobe that will help you pick stuff out that's complementary, or if you want it to be sort of the same color, just shades the same color. It's a very interesting way of spelling color, but it's incredibly helpful. I got better at things because I practiced, basically. But the actual process of making stuff was really where I feel like I learned more. It kind of broke down into 3 basic phases that played out over the course of the Dev Pipe program. Phil said some stuff that was similar to what I'm going to say. So, a lot of these things are things that I feel like a lot of people go through. So a lot of this is going to be common sense advice. So I apologize in advance. Your mileage may vary because a lot of this is just about ways that I screwed up and ways to not screw up as much. So the first phase of the process for this for me was, let's go. Let's do everything all at once. At the beginning of a project, you're always full of energy. All the things you want to do. You have the big list of just all the things you want to implement, and then just dive in, and then it's a total train wreck. Because it turns out, spoilers, you can't actually do everything at once, and you start zeroing in on individual things that you think are incredibly important because, I really want to do this. I've wasted at least maybe a day or two of effort overall, redoing our main character's sprite sheet so that he could face in either direction and the shading on it would look right, when at some point Wes was like, I'm just flipping the sprite. I'm like, yeah, that's way easier. and at the beginning it was like, I was trying to do different versions of the main character, and somehow I got that on the far side. Not happy with that.
That is awesome. I
Just take the mustache.
It had some stuff going for it, but
Most notably a mustache.
The mustache and the chest was about all it had going for it.
Is that mustache made of metal or hair?
Yes. Of course, the end result of this is that once you realize that you can't actually do all the things, and you start you start bashing your head into the wall trying to do the one thing that you've zeroed in on because, I got to do this. This is incredibly important. I'll just keep at this until I have no will to live anymore. And so, the obvious lessons from this are try and focus. Don't do everything. The Costers have talked about this before, but decision fatigue is a major thing, so that you shouldn't spend all of your time on any one thing, because after a while you'll just get sick of looking at it. And then once you're sick of looking at it, you can't make good choices about it anymore. And once you've hit that point, it's really time to pick up something else. That way you can stay fresh on the many aspects of your project and not get burnt out on the whole thing. Pace yourself, and of course, when you're in this phase, it's incredibly important to communicate with the people you're working with, or just people that you're getting feedback from, so that maybe someone can call you on, hey, I'm just flipping this sprite. Why are you doing this? Right, okay, that's good to know. Just get a little bit of a reality check of yourself then. So, the natural follow-up to this phase because again, most of this was ways in which I screwed up, is the burnout phase, where, yeah, obviously not much happens. This hit me pretty hard over a course of a couple of, I probably lost like 3 weeks out of the project to this actually, there just wasn't a lot going on because you start getting down on yourself. Thing in the industry, there's a lot of talk in the industry about depression, about imposter syndrome, about all these negative mental health things that the negative feedback loops that we get trapped in as we work on stuff and beat ourselves down. And after a while, you start to believe your own hype, and then you're like, oh, well, I'm just never going to get anything done here. And of course, this is normally when concerns from real life start really piling on, making everything worse. I would like to blame work for some stuff, but truth be told, it was always just work being magnified by the circumstances I was currently going through. So yeah, everything just kind of felt bleh. Thankfully, there were not as many spiders. Although at work today, I did find that we have a button on something that says that it's just a checkbox that says "Use spiders," and this made me indescribably happy. So the lessons from this are once you got to be able to identify those cognitive traps that we all have the little pitfalls that we fall into as we work on stuff. And if you can identify those, then you can back up, regroup a little, and sort of get the peace of mind that you need to actually start working on things again. Also, it helps to actually break down your tasks into manageable things. So instead of, hey, I'm going to work on every single facet of the character sheet or character sprite sheet all at once right now, and just make that my one uber task for this, yeah, you're going to be a lot more prone to getting fatigued on it or just getting down on yourself about it. And again, it really helps to not toil in isolation and remember who you're working with or get feedback from people, get outside eyes on it, just so that you're not just toiling away in your own sad little corner and being sad. And yeah, nothing really presentable came out of this phase. The good news is that phase 3 was hyperbole and a half, ladies and gentlemen. Was that after a couple weeks of this, basically, I almost bailed out of the project, actually, and I came to Wes and the Costers with basically, I was on my last legs and was about to give up. And after one of the IGDA meetings, we just went out, got some food, sat down, and hashed out exactly what was going on. Again, why it's incredibly important to not keep yourself in isolation, why it's important to talk to other people, why it's important to get feedback, because then you can get, it's all about perspective, it's all about accountability. And if you can keep those things, then you can stay focused and keep from completely burning out. And after sitting down and talking with them for a while, managed to actually get myself back on track by making some very positive changes. Again, I mentioned it in the phase 2 portion. Breaking down tasks into manageable chunks, incredibly helpful when it's just like, all right, I'm going to work on this element of this tile set today. Tomorrow I'll work on something else to keep myself fresh and keep moving from task to task. Also, reclaiming my own personal schedule was incredibly important. Like, I'm a night owl, and if left undisturbed, I will wake up at the last minute possible before I have to rush out the door to work, and I will stay up as late as humanly possible. This made it so I would basically get home from work, be exhausted from the day of work, and then be unable to work on anything, and then the negative feedback loop begins. But by just forcing myself to work on things for an hour in the morning before leaving for work, it meant that no matter what happened to work, I could just be like, hey, I drew a robot today, screw you, none of this matters. And also meant that, I was actually making progress. It meant that there were more opportunities for regular feedback because I'd be keeping in touch with Wes and the Costers. And yeah, just overall made me feel happier as a person to know that I was regularly making progress and making positive changes in my own life. And of course, that enables you to stop downward spirals before they even start. So yeah, sometimes it's all about taking the voice in your head that says, you're terrible at this, and telling it to go shove it somewhere, and actually get back to doing things. So it's not, in the end, it's not about doing all the things, it's about doing some of the things, and then doing some more of the things tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So all this is pretty much common sense advice, I feel like, but hopefully it was helpful to some of you. Any questions? Nope? Okay. Oh.
I have trouble getting things done, and I like the idea of waking up and getting stuff done and then going to work. But did that ever make you late to work? Because I'll get too focused.
That was definitely. There were definitely days where I would get close to that, but thankfully I drive a Mini and I know my way. I know exactly how much I can speed on Highway 40. Yeah, I mean that's a concern, but time management. But better. I feel like it's almost better to have that thing that you're really excited about involved in again. So I would have happily been late a couple days during that process to know that, again, like, I drew a robot today, screw you.
I was wondering, so was your role in this project like art and level design? What was your task?
Yeah, so I was primarily on art. So like all the stuff in that title screen was me moving pixels around. So yeah, I was mostly on art. Again, like most of the level creation actually happened during phase 2 for me. So most of the levels are Wes messing around with stuff and building some cool stuff. And I've been trying to work my way back through and like add more art assets. When Wes shows off the game a little bit later, the first rooms look a lot better because those are the ones I've had time to go back to so far. But yeah, the art is, at this point, I think the art in the game is pretty much mine.
Okay.
So
you didn't do that with level design. Wes did most of it?
Wes did most of the level design. Wes did almost all of the level design as it stands right now. I'm hoping to go back through and contribute more in that regard. It's been good.
The level's actually good.
To iterate further on them and add more stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just wondering, like, a little bit more, so transitioning kind of from the burnout stage to, like, getting back to productivity, like, kind of spurred by, like, having a meeting with the team and everyone, and the costers, like, I don't know, like, were there, like, kind of baby steps to kind of figuring out what those small things you could do, or, like, breaking things down into small tasks, or did it just kind of, like, sit down one night really kind of prompt you to do it?
Honestly, that one night definitely, that one night was sort of a major shift change. Like the first couple power hours that I picked up on after that were definitely smaller tasks, but then I did snap into it pretty quickly, I feel like, and it felt good. And then when basically I ran out of sleep that I had banked to keep doing them, then I felt worse. But yeah, so it's the thing I'm trying to keep incorporated.
Yeah.
But yeah, start small. Give yourself some credit when you acknowledge that you're in the burnout phase. Giving yourself a mega task will not help anything.
Is there anything specific that you would do if you were to start a new game that you do to sort of start on the right foot, like with your production schedule and the tasks that you're taking on, so you're not taking on too much, so you don't go through that phase 1, 2 for the phase 3 success? How would you start with the phase 3 success?
Break stuff down more. Like when it came to one of the first tasks was figure out the look of the character, and then I went really too far with that right out of the gate, and tried to do again like every position, every facing, every motion that it could do before. Like I had the crouch stuff before he could crouch. I had just again breaking tasks down into manageable chunks. If you have a task that is too large to be described as a single thing, then
What is the best and worst part of creating a pixel art-based game?
The best I'd probably say is that you have a lot of control over like not so much the scale of it, but just the functional units that things break down into. Like so when it's all tile based like this, like one tile on there is 32 pixels or 64. It's a multiple of that. Being able to work in discrete chunks like that is incredibly helpful. The worst part can be when you get down to a fine enough level of detail that you're like, this just looks like a jagged line. And if something really looks like a jagged line, instead of it's something that I've seen a lot of articles on pixel art that are like, yeah, you're trying to avoid jagged lines, basically. You want things to look smooth even though you're working with a format that is all boxes. So.
Like, how did you find the
how did you find a way to compromise between, like having you achieve your expected qualities, but also being on the productivity to have the productivity there? Because like I would imagine at first when you design the robot, you wanted it to be perfect, you wanted it to be good.
Yeah.
That's why you went overboard in that. But then as you start to compromise though, like wouldn't you fear that sometimes if I keep compromising, I keep just saying okay, I'm going to stop here, then you somehow lose the quality of what you wanted to achieve in the first place?
Well, sometimes that, I definitely understand what you're saying there. But sometimes once you get to the compromising stage that you realize what the thing you were trying to make actually was or what it could be. Like if you once you make that compromise and you realize, oh man, the thing I wanted to do before is actually completely it's completely unfeasible. Like can't do this. Terrible idea. Shouldn't have done it. So I feel like it's once you find something that's functional and once you manage to iterate on something and actually get it working, that's when you actually then you can get properly attached to it instead of just like you have a basis then instead of just like this is the idea in my head and it's awesome. And I don't know how to make it work. But then once you actually make it work, then it's like, this is the thing that's going to work. It's going to be great. Okay. And then you can focus on making that great.
Okay. So how did you manage to get to that stage? Because I just feel like, when we're working alone on stuff, sometimes you get trapped in that place. But then I guess maybe a third person's view how to realize that?
Yeah. Get feedback from get people to look at your game, get their honest opinion, badger them until they give you their honest opinion.
Put it on the web and you'll definitely get honest opinions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
How do you pronounce your email?
Just like it's spelled.
I asked the hard questions.
Thank you. If that's all, then I will yield the floor to Wes, who will have more interesting questions.
Okay. So, I don't think we actually overlap too much, which is cool. Woo! This will take just a few seconds. So here's some disclaimers. Sometimes I drop some F-bombs. Sometimes I might not, we'll see, just depends on the mood. Sometimes, what else? Yeah, and this is kind of all over the map, so deal with it.
It's a great theme.
Yeah. Okay, how do I hit play?
View presentation
Present.
or
I think the present.
It's trying. It can't connect. Yeah.
Am I connected? Oh, you. Hold on. Nope. Okay, we should be good. Okay, cool. So, we're still not. Okay. Here we go. Cool. All right. I didn't have a name, so I did what anyone without a name does. And I stole from Kubrick. And this doesn't have anything to do with the talk. Okay, so Seth taught me at one of the things to start with your credentials. So here's my credentials. I worked at Riot for a year. I've been programming professionally for 10 years. I worked on strategy guides for Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, the Duke Nukem Land of the Babes, which is probably
You're supposed to use
highlight.
Credentials.
Land of the Babes was great.
It was better. Anyway, I helped run a game magazine for 2 years. I have developed about 30 or 40 game prototypes over the course of my development career. And I own over 2,000 console games. That's just a small taste in the upper right. So this is when I was moving. Okay, my release games are none. that's 0 up there, unless you count game jam games. So yeah, which you can count. It just depends on your. It's just you don't have to maintain game jam games. You just kind of throw them out to the world and be like, give them a big F you. All right, so that's where I'm coming into this at, and that's kind of one of the things that I was hoping would come out of this Dev Pipe thing, because although I have maybe impressive credentials on paper, I don't have something in the App Store having millions of people play it. I don't have the experience of getting feedback on something I've released that I really am invested in outside of just stuff at work. And I really wanted that, and it was kind of, I wanted to be honest with myself and humble myself that even though I feel like a badass sometimes, I have a lot to learn, and these guys are badasses that have already proven that they know their shit. So yeah. And I also wanted a chance to work on a team, which is why I was really excited to get a chance to work with Steven. Because most of the stuff I've done, I just like kind of throw fake art or kind of half-heartedly get an artist involved, but I never get someone invested. I get them involved and then they kind of fall off, but I figured that having this Dev Pipe thing would be like something that I'm committing to, an artist is committing to, and we're actually invested. They're not just going to drop off. We're going to see it through to the end, and we did. So, and I also wanted to get to know these guys better. Wanted to make some friends. So there you go. So talk begins now. There's going to be 8 weeks. I'm going to talk about things I learned over 8 weeks, one at a time. It's going to be a lesson for every week, maybe one more, maybe a few more. And I'm going to demo the game in various states, so you'll be here for 8 hours. So I hope you guys brought a snack.
If not, there's vending machines.
Yeah. So before we started with the game, heard about the Dev Pipe. He already told the story of meeting him in the bar and stuff. We tossed around a bunch of different. It was you beat every 3. We were drinking. Everybody, we tossed around a bunch of ideas. We settled on Metroidvanias because everybody loves them, and it's something everyone kind of wants to make, and everyone's kind of scared to make. So maybe. So we were like, let's do it. What do we have everything to prove and nothing to prove. So yeah, I convinced Steven that it was a good idea to work in a game that I've kind of like started a few times and never really gotten very far. So this is the version. Right now I'm going to show you the version that I came into this with. This was developed in XNA, and this was not any feedback or not any work from Steven. It was just like I have kind of just been screwing around with it. And it was probably it was many years ago that I initially created it. So here it is. And I'm only going to show you this for like a second. So, but if you want to see something later, you can. So the idea is that you have a guy and you can punch stuff. And if you've been coming to these things for a long time, then this might look familiar. But yep. So it's super buggy, but it kind of works. So yeah, so that's what we started with.
Can you punch forward or just down?
You can punch forward, but it's not that cool. All right. So that's what we started with, and it's pretty fun to mess around with. So I knew I had like something, but yeah. So the first week, I came into that and I was like, okay, this is cool, but I want we should. Kind of want to make a Vita game because I've kind of been screwing around with this PlayStation Mobile. I like the idea of releasing on console for a game that you need like buttons on, and it's just like console/mobile has kind of an air of authenticity just by virtue of being on the platform. So I started like developing it in PlayStation Mobile, which uses C#, which is same as XNA, so it should be easy. And I kind of took their example projects and screwed around with them. Their example projects were all, I think, developed in Sony of Japan, and like the documentation is like somewhat in Japanese, and it's like it's a lot of like it's really kind of hard to understand why someone would structure their code like this. But I think it's just different, maybe coding cultures like maybe developed different like engine styles maybe, because it didn't translate one-to-one with the stuff I knew from C#. And they give you a lot of cool stuff like physics, but because the physics engine is like a kind of a walled garden, and their documentation isn't really relatable. I had no idea how to do stuff, so I was just plugging numbers in and seeing how it affected things. So after I spent a week screwing around with it, and I learned that I don't want to screw around with it anymore. So here's where I got after about a week. These open up pretty quick, but I'm sorry, there's like a little bit of a gap here. This one does not open up quickly. Okay, now it's let's try this. All right. Oh, no, probably. Oh. Wrong one. No, it'll do something this time. Okay, cool. So this punchline is not worth it, dude. Okay. So here's what I ended up with after about a week. Here's a cube. You can run around, you can jump. There's some scan lines. Stand still for a few seconds. Then you try to move. Hold on. You lose the ability to move after a few seconds. And I was like, okay, I could probably figure this out, but I don't want to mess with this. So, switched back to basically the same, started from the same project that I had originally. That's what I showed you. But instead of doing it in XNA, I did it in Monogame. Monogame is a port of XNA to allow it to run on any other platform, like iOS, Android, PlayStation Mobile, Mac, Windows, Linux. So in theory, coding this in Monogame would let me port it to anything. It's what Bastion was done in, it's what Towerfall was done in. So I had confidence that it'd be fine if I did that. So, but there's some stuff from XNA that wasn't ported over, so I had to kind of redo stuff from scratch to get it running. It's kind of a pain. So the thing I learned from that first whole week was like learning something new always takes longer than you think. And I wanted to use Tiled to do the level design, just because we've used it in the past and have confidence in it. But the importer for Tiled for Monogame wasn't as good as the one for XNA, so I kind of had to hack it in and get it working, which also took longer than I thought. And essentially, like, where I wanted to start from like week 0 of like getting game content created, we kind of had to wait until week 3, which sucks. So the lesson that Seth wanted me to learn was don't write an engine. And I probably should have learned that, but I still, like, I've done this game, I tried this game in Game Maker a long time ago, tried it again in XNA, and I feel like I have more confidence that what I'm writing does what I want it to do, and it's kind of a hit. Like, can't get started as quickly if you do it, and you'll see it's kind of buggy in places. But you should, if you don't know anything, just like pick up Unity and do that, because you'll get further quicker. And you'll probably, like Steven said, get some quick wins that actually give you confidence to keep moving forward. So, okay, so this is after a little bit. I got Tiled working in Monogame and I was feeling pretty good about myself. So, let's open it up. And we'll run it. And here you go. So there's some weird stuff going on still because this is just like in like production code. And this was before any of the art assets got pulled in, but you can kind of see that I have it working in Monogame and I have tile incorporated. So there's a cool, you can get him to go through the floor. I figured that would happen. Oh, anyways. Yeah. Cool. So week 3 was when kind of what Stephen touched on, where we were kind of like having trouble communicating, figuring out how to move forward. And the lesson I learned was you need to work with your team and find a way of communicating that works well between you. Because just people work well in different formats than other formats. And they're just used to different things. Should I tell? Okay. Yeah. So my favorite part of 21 Jump Street, the movie, is where the guy, he like goes back to high school and he's like undercover as a high school student, and he like meets this girl and he calls her up and he's like talking on the phone. She's like, "This is weird. I've never like talked on my phone. My friends and I just text." And I was like, "There's a gap there in just how people communicate that you have to meet them halfway." So yeah, it's the best part of the movie. It's still a good movie. Okay, so yeah, we tried phone. We were like, let's call each other every day. It didn't work. I didn't call. He didn't call. We were real sad. We tried communicating on a Kanban board, like putting tasks on a board and then kind of moving them over as we went through. We ended up using that later, but using that to hold ourselves accountable more than to communicate. We didn't really communicate through that. That was just how we held ourselves accountable. So in person we tried, and it worked well. We solved some problems, but it felt like a lot of time was used up eating pizza, and and like it felt like we were talking past each other a lot more when it wasn't a focused conversation of let me think about what I want to say, let me type it, let me send it, and then having that communication back and forth, and incorporating Butterscotch guys into those email conversations helped a ton, because just getting that feedback from them, even if it's just like, way to go guys, it's just like, it reinforces that, hey, that like people do care or might care at some point. So it's a kind of a weird thing, but it helped a ton. And it was basically what I wanted out of the game jam, was people to hold me accountable, and like that little thing made everything mean a lot more. So, but yeah, the daily progress updates or bi-daily, huge. So here's a demo of slightly later. Where it's starting to feel right, a little bit. Okay, so the robot's in, he's like dancing. You can punch the floor and have stuff happen. You can move around. You can level up your punches. Still that scan line. It's probably just because I'm not putting on this. Yeah, I think you crash when you go. No. Oh, this just loops around, so we're in the same room. But yeah, so no, this is further along. Okay. Anyways, yeah, so that was pretty far along, and we showed that off at one of our mentorship sessions, and the feedback was the punches feel like pushes. Which, if you play it again, you notice that, and like it wasn't punch bot, it was like push bot, because you're kind of just like pushing against the ground to jump, kind of pushing against the wall to push you back, and it didn't really have the impact that the punch does. Seth was like trying to push us into like getting rid of the punches extending and like having that be what pushes you, and instead have more of a snappy thing, or like just kind of make the punches less like communicative, but not in a bad way, just like how most games would do it. But I didn't totally agree with that. I think it might work for a different game, but the core of like what I wanted in my heart was like when you punch the ground to have that actual like physicality and the like have the visual language speak to the mechanics. But I think getting that feedback in the first place was proof that it wasn't there and it needed more work. So I talked about it a little bit maybe at that session, but spent a week thinking about what a punch means. And a punch is less about how it moves you, and it's more about the impact that you make against the wall, against the surface. So the first thing I tried was like when you punch the ground, it shoots out dust everywhere. And that felt a little bit better, but it still wasn't quite there. And then I tried something where if you punch the ground, it pauses for a second upon hitting the ground, and then it causes you to jump. And that it changed the feeling drastically. And I think the lesson there isn't that specifics, but more the higher level. When people give you feedback, they are telling you something isn't working. And you should try to listen to what their heart's telling them if you don't agree with necessarily what the actual advice. Look for the root of their advice and follow that if you can. So, or just do what they say because it's actually better than what you were thinking. Okay, so here's the impact timer and the particle effect. Okay, so this is basically the same thing we had last time, but when you punch the floor, it feels a lot more like you're punching something. I don't know if you guys can notice this from there, but does it seem like it's different? Yeah, you can tell a huge difference. And really, this is almost the exact same thing as what we had before. It's just like that impact is like, it makes it feel a lot more like a game. So
is this with the slight pause?
Yeah, this is it's 4 frames that it stops on. So if it's like 60 frames a second, I don't know what it is. If it's 30 frames a second, 4 frames would be like something percentage of a second.
You don't really notice the pause, but it definitely feels different.
Yeah. And it's like that's one of those things that you don't notice until you start looking at how other people are doing. So yeah, that was really cool.
Question?
Cool.
Yeah. Given what you know now, if you were doing it again or something very similar, how many hours would it take you to get to that point? In terms of kind of coding, not thinking through options and stuff.
That is not, it just depends on how much code you have built up over time and how much you know. If I had to do it now, that has more stuff than I showed you. But it would probably take me a week, 2 or 3 weeks, which is kind of where we were.
Full time, if you're
full time, it would take me like maybe a week and a half or a week. This was just a night. Yeah, it also depends on.
Unity, you don't have to do the graphics at all. You just
Sorry?
have to do. If you're using something like Unity, you don't have to use the graphics engine at all. So it depends on what engine you're using or if you're coding from scratch.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that was demo 4. So this one is more weird and ethereal. But so during this, we're at like week 5-ish. During this Dev Pipe, my days and nights were basically like get up at like 6:30, code until my son wakes up, get my son up, give him a yogurt, turn on Curious George, and just kind of hang out with them until my wife gets up. She gets up, I go to work. I come back at night, I play with my kids, put them to bed, and I think, okay, have I given my wife enough time recently? And if the answer was no, then I would like watch a show with her, or I would hang out with her doing something else. I don't know. We don't do a lot. We have kids. We don't do anything.
That's good.
Yeah, but not coding and trying to spend time with her is the important thing. And then jumping back in and coding the next day. And it was kind of like, I felt like I was trying to balance it on my own. Like, what do I owe her? Trying to like come up with in my head like what feels right. And I think like that is not as good of a relationship as talking to her about what she needs and giving her what she needs rather than what you think she needs. So yeah, I don't know. That's basically the lesson. I don't know what it says on here, but but that was the big takeaway there, was like a good relationship is built around communication, not anticipating, like not trying to read someone's mind. So yeah, there you go. So that's it. Do I have anything next? Okay, cool. No demo for that. So lesson 6 is that death makes a game. So that's something that we noticed. Like, until you die, you can have a tech demo. If you go through and play those demos that we had, you go through the rooms, it's real cool, it's fine, but there's no sense of danger because you're not like getting hit by anything. There's no urgency because there's nothing to punch. You're just kind of like moving around, and it totally is just a tech demo. But the second something can die, it feels like a game. And it's really neat how that happens. I didn't learn this during the Dev Pipe, but it's something that you kind of forget until you get to this point in every single game that you make, basically ever. Like the second you put in that like the difference, like a pass-fail, everything changes. So it comes back on the loops talk that Seth gave also. But yeah, so this is going to go long, but it's fine. So at GDC, I don't know how old I am. I'm really old. A long time ago, someone from Nintendo gave a talk, and it was like, come on, Nintendo can't talk about anything that actually has value, because all of it is like close-guarded secrets. And the thing that they said is something dumb that is so obvious to anyone. And what they said was, what makes a game is risk and reward. And at the time, it was like, that's so dumb and obvious. But what this Death makes a game is the actual working, like, tangible experience of risk and reward. It's like, once there's a risk, there is a reward. And trying to figure out where that risk and, like, balancing that risk and reward is basically where what separates good games from bad games. So yeah, if you can remember that. Okay, so demo 5, enemies explode. Okay. So we didn't have enemies before, now we have enemies. So we have this guy, he kind of moves back and forth, still have the same punching, and just being able to knock into him and having him explode adds a lot to, like, hey, this is like suddenly pretty fun. So yeah, that's it. Cool. So yeah, lesson 7. So your game flow dictates design. We knew up front we wanted to do a Metroidvania. We had moving between rooms, we had the enemies at this point, but we didn't have how the game would kind of feel when you play it. In Metroidvanias, I played Metroid 2 sometime during this like Dev Pipe thing, and what struck me is all the walls look the same. It's a lot of like going through a long corridor that you fight a few enemies in and eventually end up somewhere. But the game is compelling because going through that long corridor gives you a feeling of exploration. That when we had just the rooms and like kind of really strong opponents, it didn't feel like you were exploring, it felt like you were playing a tech demo. So when we started to string out these rooms and kind of give a purpose to them, suddenly it started to feel like, hey, this this is more like a Metroidvania. Do you agree, Stephen? Yeah. Okay. So we haven't really talked about this. And it was really cool. And the other thing we noticed is when you punch the ground and jump, if you're right on the edge of the brick, then you will clip the wall and you'll jump like half as high as you want and you'll always end up in a pit. And it really sucks. We didn't fix that. So it still feels like that, but we did notice it when we like put it in front of Seth and we're like, hey, check out this. And he's like, I can't make any jump. And it's like, okay. But we would have noticed that much sooner if the making jumps and like the full exploring kind of vertical slice had been in earlier. And we probably would have done more to kind of iterate on that rather than just kind of push forward and get content shoved in. And it probably would have made the game a little better. And we'll still go back and do that. But it's interesting that game flow, getting that in would have taught us something earlier. So, and that picture in the corner is the actual map of what we have in the game now. So, minus a few rooms. So, cool. And a bonus lesson. So, one of the things we wanted to get out of this Dev Pipe was learning how to promote a game. And we learned pretty early on when we were trying to write up like these long blog posts about the progress of the game, that when you don't have a game and you just kind of have a tech demo, nobody has any reason to care. And you're just taking time that you could be putting into the development, just writing up these blog posts. That doesn't mean there's not value in promoting, but I think what we should have done is put that promotion into the development community instead of the like audience community, because then if you run into problems, you'll have a network of people that can help you through them. And then also, if other people want to know how to do something, you've given them a tool that they're gracious to use, or like a tutorial that they're gracious to use, like happy to use, and they'll remember that and come back and promote your game because you taught them how to do tiled and monogame or something like that. So we didn't do that very well, but I think if you want to promote your game early on, that is how you do it, not by talking about your game. So, yeah. Okay, so here's the actual game. We're going to show the whole thing. This might take a little bit. Hopefully you will get the gist of it. We do have audio with that. There's not too much audio. Oh, yeah, there we go. Save room. See, there's a F-bomb. There we go. Okay, I'm going to cheat. We'll get past that area quicker this time. The save room doesn't work. That's why the save room's there, by the way, so you don't have to do all this. Oh, there you go. Okay. I'm gonna cheat. I got all my life back. There you go.
Free music archive?
Cool. So that's what we made. So here's my big takeaway. If you're serious about indie development, you need to decide if being a gamer or a game developer is more important to you. So I said at the beginning, like I have 2,000 games. Like gaming is my identity. If there's a game that came out, you want to ask me about it? Probably have it. Let's borrow it. It's cool. But like that's who I am. And during this Dev Pipe, I didn't really play. Like I played Mega Man 2 on Game Boy and like these real simple like stuff that I don't actually invest myself in because I didn't want that to pull myself away from my development tasks. And I didn't feel like my life was missing anything. Like that time that I spend playing games was filled doing something that is kind of similar to playing games. It's like when you play a game, you are kind of investing in progress, get to the end, and you see the ending, and it's like, I accomplished something. When you work on this game, you invest yourself in making progress, and when you get those small wins, you're like, hey, I accomplished something. And it didn't hit me that I didn't feel like that part of me was missing until like we sat down for that final like talk. But that was like really significant for me because I've heard that before, but I've never like internalized it. And I was like, oh, I can quit anytime. But this was like a real tangible like, if this part of my identity was missing and I filled it with this, I would be just as happy. So yeah. So keep that in mind if you find yourself deciding, should I play this game or should I work in this game? If you're serious about it, the choice is made for you. So there you go. Cool. So after we were done with the Dev Pipe, I was like, okay, I'm not going to work on it for a week at least. I'm going to like spend the time with my wife. I'm going to like play all the games that I like pushed off. Got Transistor, got Super Time Force. And I played all that stuff, and I like spent time with my wife, and it was like I didn't feel like my I had a big goal that I cared about that I was working toward during the Dev Pipe, and when I kind of put that on the back burner, I didn't feel like I could accomplish much anything else either. So when I was doing the Dev Pipe, I was like, oh, I started another project in the middle of it, and I'm like, oh, I'll just work on it here and there. And I basically finished a different game while I was working on this game. And it didn't faze me. I got a lot done. And it's like just because I had that thing I cared about I was moving toward, and without that, it just kind of fizzled out. So trying to get back into that right now. And yeah, so going okay. Probably should need to play less games, but but yeah, I think that was really interesting for me. Also, we haven't talked about that before. But it's totally true. That's happening. So yeah, so you saw the game. The deadline was mostly hit. It's kind of at a weird place where it feels mostly good, but there's like a little bit off in every area. Like the collisions, the thing I talked about with jumping, like the explosions need to be bigger, would you say?
Always.
And just like a little, like polishing things upward and just making it something that we want to release. Figuring out how we want to release it if we can. Because if we're going to put all this time into it, we need to figure out, like, okay, this is going to realistically take several more months. So if we're going to do that, we don't want to just throw this shit out on, like, PlayStation Mobile potentially, and, like, then have it die with Tuffy the Corgi. But yeah, we want to figure out maybe what we want to do with it. So we need to talk about it. But yeah, that's I think where we're going from here is talking and then deciding what to do. So yeah. Can anyone name what this is from? Adam? Adam? Pokemon XY?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, any questions?
So this is maybe more of a feedback thing, and it's also maybe directed more towards Steven. But the initial backgrounds, like the orange and teal, I freaking love them. And like as soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa, I want to play this thing, and they're all gone.
Could you see the line that I didn't get background polishing?
That's what I was like. It's like very just line. Okay, good. That's what I wanted to hear.
If someone were to like come up with a project like this and create something, between both of your time, how much of like a time investment you guys say put into this? Just like someone were to start a project.
Exactly number of hours.
All your free time. No.
I don't have any of that, so I'm screwed.
No, it just depends on how fast you want to progress and how long you can stay motivated. To get to here, it also depends on how skilled you are. If you have something in mind and how much of a vision you have. Because sometimes if you're just like throwing shit at the wall and you don't have a vision behind it, you could spend 6 years on it and not make any progress. But if you do have a vision behind it and you know how to progress toward it and can communicate that to your team, then it probably won't take much time. So it really depends on you and what you put in, what you want out. Is that wishy-washy?
I would estimate that in weeks.
It took about 8 weeks.
What was our estimate? Put in like 7 hours a week.
Yeah, but it just depended on the time we had.
It ebbed and flowed a lot.
Yeah.
It's whatever you can carve out that brings it out.
When you say 8 weeks, were those 7-hour weeks or 40-hour?
They were
On average, 7 hours a week.
1 to 6 hour days, 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week.
Basically, our answer is it varies.
So around 50 hours, which is about a game jam.
Yeah, well, that's what we talked about. Like, yeah, this is sort of
introspection time.
It's like game jam and bullet time.
But in a game jam, you progress differently because you
for sure
throw shit in there that you know is going to work. You're not going to like experiment with stuff, and we kind of took some time to experiment, like make a mustache box character. You wouldn't do that in a game jam.
I bet Steven would.
Yeah, Steven would.
Sorry, I would say that depends on the person.
Yeah. Cool. So would you guys Is that cool? Would you want to play it?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
If you fix the save room, yes. Is the point of the game exploration, or are you adding like more enemies and like maybe boss? Or we talked about bosses and stuff.
It probably wasn't clear because it didn't go. But at one point, I got longer fists, which let me get higher up. Yeah, and then there would be those things that you either get through bosses or through not bosses. There'd be stuff hidden in the walls you can grab. You can buy upgrades for like health and stuff like that. We had all this stuff talked about, and it's just like trying to prioritize what to put in first. But it should be, if it's done right, it should be exploration is rewarding and progression is rewarding. And most of the impediments for either of those things are filed away so that you're just being rewarded. And for both of those.
One thought about punching. Just a suggestion that to me seems like would help is when you punch, if the fist would stay, I don't know how you could do it, but if the fist stayed out longer, so it looked like as you punch your body is being pushed away, and your fist is still staying there for a second, might make it look more punchy.
That's true. I was trying to figure that out because I think that there's a problem with gravity, with the velocity, and with the length, because all of those things mixed together tell you how high you're going to jump. Oh, and air friction. So all of those things mixed together tell you how high you can jump. And if you get one of those wrong, it feels floaty. If you get one of those like too right, then you just like fall like a brick. And if you don't get it right, then you don't jump high enough to actually make any jumps. So trying to figure out how to tweak those numbers to make it perfect is not something we've done yet. So, but I do think that keeping the fist out longer would definitely help when you're fighting enemies too. Because right now, if you get faster punches, you'll jump higher, but your precision has to be better when you punch enemies. But if you kept your punch out there, it wouldn't matter as much, your precision. So, yeah. I thought about that like a few days ago. So I was trying to figure out how to improve the jumping. The other thing I was thinking is while you punch, maybe you can't move left and right. So while you're colliding with the wall, you're like stuck, and then you can move. And that might work, and it might be cool for puzzles too. Like if you're trying to bounce over to a wall, you could like shoot yourself up, and then if you have a long punch, you could be up against the wall and like have it push you up. Because right now you punch and it's just kind of like. And it'd be different from every other game, I think, which might be bad. So, yeah. We're good. So, cool. I think we're good. You want to talk about the future? Oh, Adam. Hold on, no. Cameraman.
So, I noticed with both of the projects, you guys and Phil's, we had like this huge surge of productivity in like the 11th hour. Like the last demo was just like huge upgrade from the demo previous to that week 7 or whatever. Do you feel like this project has gone significantly different if it did a 4-week dev pipe or a 16-week dev pipe? Did you come to the same point at the end?
So we didn't have any levels until like a week before the end. Maybe 2 weeks. When I showed the demos, I was like, I faked it out so it would look like I got more done. But yeah, that was just saying, okay, we've iterated on little things enough up until this point, but it's like, we have to get shit in, or it's going to be a lot less. So we probably would have just put stuff off more and then just done the same kind of thing. We'd probably have more polish in some areas. And we might have like the whole loop back to the starting room potentially, but yeah, probably be about the same, with a little bit more polish. So, at least from my perspective.
Thanks to Wes and Phil. These guys were our guinea pigs in a big way because we're always trying to figure out how to work these things we've learned on people to help them kind of take their skills to the next level, that sort of thing. So we had been planning on announcing the new Dev Pipe actually tonight. Then I got re-diagnosed with cancer a month ago, and then undiagnosed with cancer last Wednesday. So things were a little weird for a month. So we're still back in the planning phase. We got a lot of really, really good feedback from these guys. We kind of realized that what we initially thought we were going to be giving, which was a lot of more so technical help, design help, ended up being, the Dev Pipe itself ended up being, as you probably saw from the talks, more about the people. Right? It's more about people and process. Every single person is different, and every single project is very, very different. If you have a team versus not, it's a very different game altogether. So what we're doing in the future is, what the major goal of it is to allow people to come in with a slightly less sort of restrictive requirement, which is that, again, for this one, you had to have a team, you had to have a game idea already coming into the game. There was no way that we provided no sort of platform for you to mix and match, try to find an artist, for example, if you're a programmer, or vice versa, or if you're a music guy, find a team to work on. So what we'd like to do for the next round is actually provide, before the Dev Pipe hits, provide a sort of like speed dating arena, I guess. Just people to meet and mingle and get to know each other really, really quickly, and then see if they match up personality-wise. What we found is essentially, again, it is about the people. The reason Seth and I work really well together and we've been able to get through so much crap together is because of the fact that we're related, so we can't really get rid of each other, right? So anything that goes wrong, I know that Seth's going to be sticking around at the end of the day to talk through whatever the problem was, figure it out, and really what it comes down to is the person. Even if it's by yourself, right? Everybody's got their needs. You got to figure out your own stuff. And what we realized is that was actually more of the work we were doing, was helping people with process, with time management, with detecting and figuring out kind of that level of introspection necessary to really push to completion. So with that, and actually the question about the timeline, we've been toying with also reducing the time for about a 6-week window. I think there's a lot of value in having a longer stretch of time because it allows a lot more introspection, which is kind of the bread and butter of the whole thing. There's always a lot of 11th hour work to get stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what we basically found was that the amount of time that it takes you to do something is the amount of time that you've given yourself. And you guys were observing, it seems like in both cases, most of the progress was made in the last 7 days, it seems. There were a lot of struggles in the meantime on that stuff. But yeah, so we figure if we move it to a 6-week thing, then we probably still get some pretty dang good results. And yeah, what we're also looking to do the next time around is we're going to try to be a lot more flexible. So, like Sam said, our criteria this time was you need to have a team and you need to have a game idea, and then we're going to try to do what we can to help you realize that vision over 8 weeks. Problem is, not everybody's even at that point yet. Some people just want to learn how to program, or I just want to learn some basic art skills, so that I can try to get my foot in the door on this stuff. So we're going to try to make it a lot more flexible next time around for anybody at any skill level. So we're still kind of hammering out the details with all that, but just keep an eye out. If this sounds like something that might be beneficial to you if you've been struggling with these kinds of projects on your own, then by all means, throw your name in the hat and we'll try to do what we can.
The final note here is that we're going to iterate on this thing until we find a really good model. Then we're going to try to do is actually scale it. That's using previous people who've gone through Dev Pipe as well as other developers around the area to actually, again, add more people to the pipe and get a sort of community around that whole mentorship. So that is the sort of
thought along the lines of the last few days being the most productive. This may be hard because people are different. I guess have different workflows, but you can schedule intermediate deadlines. You maybe get those last 3 days.
So we tried that. We did a milestone. Essentially established milestones the first week, modified in the second week, and then through the way for you guys. That's basically how it goes, right? You understand, you start seeing the problems, and you're asking about how much time does it take to get from here. The reality is, what you see on the screen is, like, yes, Wes, how long would it take to get back to that point if you started now? The answer is probably a trivial amount of time compared to how long it took to get to the first place, right? That's where that expertise comes from. That's kind of the blocker of the whole thing. The reason you have to go through the whole 8, 6, 30 week stretch is going to take a lot of time to hammer out all those little tiny details that you also don't get to see the problem. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.